morning, everybody. My name is Francine Romelia. I'm the interim town manager for the town of Loxahatchee Groves. Today, we're at our second listening session for the Okeechobee Boulevard overlay. The goal for today is to hear what you have to say. In the chambers here, it's being recorded. And additionally, one of the things that we learned from our last listening session is that we probably need to go ahead and get comment cards from you before you speak, because we want to make sure that we capture all of your comments, both at the microphone and also in writing by your name. We're very fortunate because we've had Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council come to help us facilitate this session. It's a very passionate topic, and they're a very independent, learned organization dealing with not only Palm Beach County, but the whole of the Treasure Coast, and they're very familiar with the kind of issues that we're dealing with today. They'll make a short presentation on some of the key points of the overlay, and you have a handout, and if you don't, Miss Cherie in the back can give it to you. That gives you a couple of the key points, and it does provide the whole document that is ready for its second reading, and it will be going to the second reading with a summary by Treasure Coast of both of these listening sessions, so that when the council discusses it, they will also be discussing everything everybody said at these meetings. So I want to make sure that we have time for everybody's comments. I know it's Saturday morning and people have a lot of things to do. So we do have our planning consultant and advisor, Mr. Fleischman, here, but we're trying to have the presentation first and save Mr. Fleischman's comments for any of the technical questions that come up during your comments and questions. So if anybody has any questions, I'll take them, but otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Tom Lanahan, the Executive Director of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. And by the way, for anybody that was here last time, Kim Delaney, who is his partner in crime, does have COVID and regrets that she could not be here for part 2 of the event. So anyway, without further ado, here's Tom.
Okay, well, thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's a very hot mic, so when you do get your chance to come up here, you don't have to get anywhere close to this thing. Again, I'm Tom Lanahan. I'm the Executive Director of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. It's a pleasure to be here today. Like Francine said, I am filling in for Kim, but I also appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all. I want to start off with a couple of quick questions. In the room here, who lives in Loxahatchee Groves? Probably everybody. Okay. Who doesn't live in Loxahatchee Groves? I don't. But I know the area. I used to work down here in Palm Beach County, lived in Palm Beach County for many years. Who owns a business in Loxahatchee Groves? Okay, we got 3. Awesome. Who's on the town council in Loxahatchee Groves? Do we have the entire council here? We do. Okay, outstanding. And who was here, well, not here, but who was at the previous session? Okay, so about half or so. Okay, well, very good. That completes the question part. Let me throw that over there. Okay, so we have a quick overview for you. I guess pick whichever screen is convenient for where you're sitting. They're all the same. Let's see if the clicker works. Okay, so who are the regional planning councils? We are an agency formed by an interlocal agreement among 4 counties. That's Palm Beach, Martin, St. Lucie, and Indian River County. Every county in the state of Florida is in a regional planning council, so there's a total of 10 councils across the entire state. Our governing board is made up of county commissioners, city council people, and appointees of the governor's office. We cover a broad range of issues: urban planning, community revitalization, transportation policy, economic development, and emergency management. So a whole host of different brownfields. Let's see what else. We have a whole bunch of different things that we work on, and so we work at the direction of that council. So there is representation from across the region, a lot of diversity of perspectives and opinions. We get together and try and find consensus solutions to the problems that face our region as we continue to grow. And one of the other things that we do is provide technical assistance to local governments, and so that's part of why we're here today. We have the advantage of being a participant and observer in a lot of different conversations across the region and across the state, but we don't have a direct dog in any of the controversies that are going on. I don't have taxing authority. I don't have regulatory authority. So we're not here to tell you all what to do. We're here to help you find a way to do what you want to do. And that's kind of the approach that we take. And it's always by invitation. We don't just ride into town and say, okay, start giving out orders to everybody. This is the second of two resident discussion workshops that the town has put on on this, the most recent, I guess, discussions on this issue. So here's the area in question, and you also have it in a handout as well. It's the length of Okeechobee Boulevard through the town limits, a road that obviously has, excuse me, a lot of different character to it across its length, from some of the most urbanized pieces of Palm Beach County at its eastern end to some of the more rural areas of the county on its western end. So here's the, all right, this is the part where I have to put my glasses on because I can't actually read these numbers. Here's the parcels in the town along Okeechobee Boulevard. And this is just parcel count, not acreage. So you have 22 residential parcels, and this is with the property appraiser use codes assigned to those. So as you can see, it's mostly residential with a fair bit vacant, total of 71 parcels. And your institutional uses include schools, churches, and Palm Beach County Fire Rescue Station, and I guess a lodge or a private club. So what is under consideration is an overlay zone, which is a zoning term of art. And this is a definition from the American Planning Association. And essentially what it does is you have a set of basic zoning requirements that are established on the piece of property, and an overlay zone can provide additional criteria, additional requirements to tune general zoning categories to a specific area. It's an effective approach for taking a general rule and making it more compatible with a specific geography. So these are the sorts of things that typically end up in an overlay zone. Particular setback rules, a particular set of what are called floor area ratios, which is a mathematical formula of the square footage of a building compared to the area of the site. So it's a way to regulate the scale or the bulk of construction on a piece of property. So one way to think about it is, and actually it doesn't. So it could be flat. So it obviously operates on a lot of footprint, but is only 1 story high, or it can be multiple stories, smaller footprint, but more height in it. So it's that total volume, if you will. Building lot coverage, which is how much roof area sits on the site. Density standards, how many units per acre, dwelling units per acre. Lot size, so that's how big of a piece of property do you need to have in order to be allowed to develop at all. Buffer requirements, so that's like your landscape strip that goes around the outside of the property. Impervious surface quantities, so that's how much hard stuff you can have on the site. That would be building roof, parking lots, driveways, walkways, things like that. Vegetation requirements, what kind of trees do you need to have around the perimeter and internal? What kind of hedges do you need to have? Those sorts of things, and how many of them. And then building floor height minimum. So sometimes in a code, this is usually in a more kind of, well, it could be at all kinds of settings. You'll want like the buildings up a couple of steps or something like that. That's something that could be put in there. Building height requirements, building maximums could also be in an overlay zone. The future land use map, so this is, there's a couple of primary regulatory documents that you have in the town. One is the future land use map. So that is intended to be a 20-year planning horizon. That is, where do we see, what do we see the uses being in the community 20 years out into the future? It affects today, but it's also a long-range planning tool. So this gives the designations that you have in place. The red outline is the area in question, and the bulk of it is in the residential category now in your future land use map. And then I'm hoping, okay, so these are the changes that would need to, that are, I guess, proposed at this point to the future land use element. And is this all new text, or am I going to find strikeout and underline in here? I'm terribly sorry. It's near the end, probably. I hope everybody got to read that. No, I'm kidding. That material is all available for you. So this basically lays out one of the things that you have to do in your comprehensive plan, which is where the future land use element lies, is you cannot have a zoning district, that's the more specific rules, that is not consistent with the comprehensive plan. So to add a new zoning district or a new overlay, they need to amend the comp plan to provide for that. And then here are some examples of floor area ratios and maximum building sizes, and these are all the different categories across the town. These are all the actual parcels. Okay, so that's a list of all the parcels that are along the street there, and some of the, to give you an idea of the relative magnitude of the floor area ratio proposal compared to what's existing. So this is an illustrative example, taking a 5-acre parcel, which in this image I believe has a house on it, and then looking at how that floor area ratio would get applied on there. The left example is a 0.1, which is another way of saying 10%. And then the next one over is a 0.07 or 0.7 of a percent, or 7% actually, and then 0.05, which is like 5%. So if you think about it, if you had an acre of property at a 0.1, you could have a tenth of an acre in floor area. So whether that is that could be 1 story at a tenth of an acre, or 2 stories at half of a tenth of an acre. I'm sorry, the math gets funny. And then the other part that's illustrated in this, and I don't know, do I have it bigger? No, I don't. The other part that's illustrated in this is you can see kind of these different hatchings around the edges here, and that is showing the perimeter landscape buffer that's in the proposal, and then the setback that's in the proposal. So here is some of the math on what's in the proposal. So that 5-acre parcel would yield a maximum building footprint of 22,000 square feet with a 15% maximum lot coverage and your 10% floor area ratio. And then here it is at 0.07. Obviously, it goes down because it's a more stringent requirement, and then down even further to about 11,000 square feet. Okay, so now to our next part here. What I would ask that everybody do so that I can keep up with what we're doing, and then we can also make sure that we capture everyone's input We do have the town's consultant here. If there are specific questions about the actual wording in the proposal that you'd like to ask, Jim can field those for you. So what we're going to do is we have comment cards from everyone. If you did not get a chance to fill out a comment card or indicate that you want to speak, please do so. Raise your hand if you need one. Oh, there we go. Okay, we got a customer right over there. And then Francine is going to call everybody up one at a time. We'll take your input. If there's questions, we'll try and answer those. And then we'll move on to the next person. So once we get that started, I'm going to move and sit in the audience so that I can see you face to face instead of staring at your back. And we'll get everybody's input. So whenever and you'll come up to this microphone here.
That microphone,
And again,
I'm gonna say it.
and it's a pretty hot mic, so you just stand right back here where I am, and I think we can all hear you just fine.
Yeah.
Are we ready
Yes,
to call
we
some
are
names?
ready.
Okay.
Morley, you are first.
Okay. Let me scoot here into.
Please state your name.
My name is Morley Sloss. I'm from Sunsport Gardens on North Road, and I've been talking to other people at Sunsport, and I'm pretty sure I'm representing the community, which has probably the most dense population in Loxahatchee Groves at the moment. We have strong feelings that Okeechobee Road needs to remain a rural road without any of this development we're talking about, like no development. Have traffic circles to slow it down. If there's anything we don't need, it's more traffic on Okeechobee, which any commercial development would produce. It would also tend to split the town into two sections. There's already pressure on Okeechobee from Westgate to the north of us. We don't, as I say, we should do everything possible, keep the road narrow, build horse trails on one side, roundabouts, and so on. In other words, keep it like it is. I love this list that's in the packet on what's there. It's almost all single vacant or single family homes or religious, virtually, almost 100% of it. That's how it should remain. I know there's pressure from developers who want to sell their land for a lot of money to put commercial in, but that's not in the interest of the town as a whole. What we need to do is keep it simple, keep it like it is, keep it rural. As I say, put the roundabouts in, and certainly we don't want an overlay that would allow development. So I would suggest we reject the overlay and or keep it simple the way it is now, keep it rural. Thank you.
Deborah Marshall.
Classes.
You see them here? There you go.
I apologize. My sunglasses are bifocal, so I'm trying to look cool here. Reading glasses. So my name is Dr. Deborah Marshall. I'm an equine veterinarian here in Loxahatchee. I moved up here because my practice was destroyed in the Redlands from development. My practice was destroyed in the Kendall area from development, Sunset Horse Country from development, Davie from development, Sunshine Ranches from development, Western Ranches from development, Calder Racetrack from development, Coconut Creek from development. When I came up here, we were permanently zoned agricultural all north and west of us, and then a corrupt politician zipped all that zoning, and we've sort of been in trouble ever since. I am also was a member of the Charter Review Committee. So what I wanted to discuss a little bit, I think I agree with the gentleman from Sunsport. I believe that we should be protecting and restoring our rural character. When we founded the town, and there are some founders here, part of what the charter says is that we are experiencing certain impacts, such as the destruction of rural habitats and the threat to equestrian, farming, and nursery businesses resulting from urbanization in the surrounding areas. The residents in the town would like to control the effects of those impacts through the incorporation of the town and its continued existence as a historic rural community. In section D, it says it is intended that this charter and the incorporation of the Loxahatchee Groves area will serve to preserve and protect the distinctive rural characteristics of the community, such as low density, minimal lot coverage, substantial open spaces, agricultural and nursery industries, interests, and rural habitats, and to acknowledge its close ties to the agricultural and equestrian boundaries within the town. So with these intents in mind, and we in the Charter Review Committee, actually our main goal was to help solidify that portion of the Charter Review. The staff kept asking us to do other things that were quicker and that needed to go on to votes, and we did that, and then COVID hit. And we have not been able to meet since, and I understand now we would have to be reappointed. So what we had intended to do was to identify, we did lots of homework and lots of research on this, and I have full notebooks there that anybody can look at, on what is it that keeps a town rural and what are the dangers to rural. So what we felt was that these distinctive rural characteristics, that this also mandated, and I'm going to go over these in a little bit of detail in a minute, the protection, preservation, and restoration of the tree canopy. We have lost 100,000 trees on North Lake alone from the county putting through the water pipes there and have not restored them. Taking special care to protect and preserve mature and old-growth native trees. We are now losing almost 100 trees a day, some of this from FP&L doing their sort of scratch and burn stuff underneath those power lines. The protection and preservation of our water sources, including the water table and aquifers, which are vital to all rural and agricultural endeavors. As we know, Westlake did not do an environmental impact study that included Loxahatchee, and they were allowed to drop our water table 8 feet. If we had insisted on being included, they would not have been able to do that because of our agricultural status. Rural characteristics mandate minimizing and reducing traffic throughout the Loxahatchee Groves area, reducing light pollution as this adversely affects agricultural entities, mandates minimizing and reducing noise pollution, and protecting livestock and wildlife. All council members shall be bound by the legislative intent of the charter. All council members are bound by the legislative intent of the charter, which is to keep this rural. So as we go through some of these things, one of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit, again, is the traffic. Every decision that we make here needs to be to decrease, discourage, and divert traffic from around Loxahatchee Groves. And again, when I brought this up to one of the staff members, what they said is, well, the charter is really just aspirational. And I'm like, it is not aspirational, it is our Constitution. It mandates that we must keep and protect the rural characters. So every decision that is made has to say, does this preserve the rural characters of Loxahatchee? Does a 22,000 square foot building on 71 lots, how does that preserve? Does it decrease traffic or does it increase it? Light pollution is actually now listed as one of the leading causes of health problems by the World Health Organization and by the American Medical Association. Light pollution suppresses melatonin, which most people think just allows them to sleep, but it controls your entire reproductive and immune systems. And for us, anybody who has an apiary, that's the beekeepers, it will kill 75% of our pollinators in less than a month from light pollution. It also changes the seasonal characteristics of all our livestock and mammals and keeps them constantly in season when they're not supposed to be. So it has a tremendous agricultural effect, the light pollution. And again, the noise pollution, we're already getting the noise on 161st from Seminole Pratt. We can certainly make ways to go around that. Again, I want to stress that the charter is not an aspirational thing. It is our Constitution, and every council member is bound by that Constitution. I see nothing in this Okeechobee overlay that decreases, discourages, and diverts traffic, that reduces light pollution, that restores the tree canopy. One of the council members I heard saying, well, agriculture, they can just, strip out all the trees and do a pasture and put 3 cows on it. I'm like, have you seen site preparation going on next to Aldi's? Do you see any trees there? Site preparation is a different thing. One of the things that I wanted to talk about too is the minute that you go to that size building, I spoke to somebody who does commercial law for a living, and they're like, the minute you have that size of a building, you can mandate through the county that you must have a central turn lane for your big trucks. You must have adequate parking for those trucks, whether that's impervious or concrete. That still means you don't have any trees. One of the things that happens too, and it's happening in the Publix parking lot, that black asphalt raises the ground temperature there. The surface ground temperature on that black asphalt is 20 degrees higher than it is in natural ground, and it raises the temperature above that of 7 to 10 degrees of the air temperature coming off that asphalt. So those things are done as well. And again, Joe Siciliano also had thoughts about this. If we turn to the town planner and said, it is your job to decrease, discourage, and divert traffic, it is your job to restore and replace the canopy, it is your job to reduce light pollution, noise pollution in this area, it is your job to protect our livestock, and there, for me, with the horses, I'm like, I don't need these horses in heat 12 months out of the year, trust me. And it interferes with their show stuff, and then you have to put them on heavy hormone things to stop them from coming to heat all year so that they can show. And I
Ms.
don't
Marshall?
think that's fair.
I don't want to cut you off. I just
fine.
want to
You can
see
cut
if
me
you
off
could.
then.
No, I wish you could wrap up
That's
a little
good.
bit, and we can go ahead and get some more of the speakers.
If anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. Or they want to know the impacts. And again, the impacts on this, we are all against this overlay, period, end of statement.
And don't forget, we're going to have some open question and answer later, so I didn't mean to, dismiss that. I just want to get everybody up here. Miss Holly Prosser at 2015 B Road requests that her question and comment be read into the record, and she says, no commercial zoning or overlay on Okeechobee Boulevard. It does not comply with the original vision of this town. And then the next speaker is Simon, who goes by one name, I guess, now.
I'm going to make some comments. I'm not
Yeah.
going to be long-winded, because everybody wants to enjoy this stuff.
Everybody's got to get a chance.
My name is Simon Fernandez. I own property in Okeechobee, and I would like to see if there's any other owners in Okeechobee, because it seems like not a lot of people come down. So the first comment I want to ask Jim, since you did that, why is the Big Dog Ranch 30 acres is shown as a single family? That's totally misleading. That needs to be corrected. That goes in your account. The other thing is,
What your questions, we're going to hold them to the end, and he
I won't
will
be here
answer.
because I got other engagements, but I want to make sure that that is very clear on everything. The also the footprint on the property, it talks about 5 acres. What happens if you have 10 acres? That's not really. I mean, if it's twice, they should put it. If it's not, they should put it. So it's not put there. And I'm glad you mentioned the original charter, because in the original charter, we'll either go by the original charter or we don't. The original charter clearly stated that commercial, okay, and light commercial, or I forget the other word what it was, should be in arterial and or collector roads. We have one arterial, which is southern, and one collector that is Okeechobee. So if you decide to change that, which and I have the meeting, it was on the town crier, you can look it up. They surgically, when Mr. McClendon was in the council, they surgically, and without a lot of fuss, erased that to try to create all this political havoc that is being created. You either respect the original charter or you don't. So you let me know, and let's make sure. There's not a lot of trees in Okeechobee. And I'm sorry that you lost your practice in Broward. But if you look at the back of all our properties, all of them, you go from North Road, and I don't get up and talk much because I get a little. They're coming in, we're guarding the door with a pea shooter. And they're coming in from the back with machine guns. The trucking companies, the transfer companies, everybody. I would be more concerned with that than an overlay. And the other thing, Jim, I want to ask another question. Why are you mentioning in here the historic value legacy? We don't have today anybody that qualifies under that historic legacy. So I don't know if that's some kind of misprint, very large, but nobody qualifies under that. So why put it? Thank you.
Respecting that Mr. Fernandez is going to leave and that there are 3 very important clarifications needed, Mr. Fleischman's going to go ahead and address those real quick.
Okay, in terms of why Big Dog Ranch has a single-family use code on the table, the use codes are the use codes that are assigned to the property by Palm Beach County Property Appraiser's Office. It doesn't necessarily reflect the actual use of the property. If there's a property that the appraiser doesn't know what the specific use is, they will assign the principal use in the zoning district. The zoning district is agricultural residential. And the principal use is single family. That's how it got that use code.
When was the last time you checked that?
When I did this table, which was not
Many months ago.
Yes.
I suggest you go back and check it because it's no longer designated as a single family. Thank you.
Okay, well, it was at the time I did it, and that was part of a grant study that we did over a year ago.
Well, Mr. Fleischman, let's just clarify for the record that the property appraiser addresses changes in the property use each July, and that is probably one of the changes they made. So we can go back and double check that.
And as far as how much you can build on 10 acres, we have the .1 FAR that's applied to a 5-acre parcel, which is around 22,000 square feet. We also have another policy in there stating that the maximum building size is 25,000 square feet. So on a 5-acre parcel, 22,000 square feet. On a 10-acre parcel, 25,000 square feet. On a 15-acre parcel, 25,000 square feet.
But they can split, because we're zone 5, they can split 5, 5, 5.
They absolutely could split, yes. And as far as the historical legacy goes, historical legacy has been in the code ever since the code was written in 2010. There has been no property to this point that has been assigned the historical legacy designation, primarily because it is very difficult to prove. You have to go prove that you were an operating business all the way back to 2006. The only change that we're making to historical legacy in this proposal is that businesses that were in existence in 2020 can now apply. Now that just means that we have a better opportunity to address non-permitted uses that have existed and were created sometime between 2006 and 2020. And we have a better opportunity of getting some designations. Getting that designation gives the town the opportunity to get in and do a specific review of properties and address any negative impacts and get them to make commitments for improvements and the future of the property. That's the reason why it's in there, and it's in there only to increase the date of existence from 2006 to 2020.
There was also something else he said. He talked about the change to the charter regarding the designation of Okeechobee Boulevard. That was actually a ULBC change.
In the comprehensive plan, the designation of Okeechobee is urban collector. We're recommending that the change be made from urban collector to minor collector.
He had said it was in the charter that we changed.
The original charter.
We changed the original charter.
We can't do this, because we need to be able to capture everybody's comments, so we can't. I'm sorry, I don't want to shut you down, but I just want to make sure we get everybody.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the comprehensive plan. What's in the comprehensive plan, we're changing it from an urban designation to a minor designation.
You can't hand them the microphone?
Well, let's do it that way, and then we'll have the information shared back and forth, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's very important to get everything into the record, and so that everyone, we did not necessarily capture everything on our audio last time. So I think that we're really being extra cautious about getting it on the record. Okay, thank you, Mr. Fleischman. I do think, if you wouldn't mind, we can finish the other three comments, and then we'll go ahead and go to Mr. McClendon. Roxana Coleman has a comment.
Hi, everybody. Hi there, I'm Roxana Coleman. I live at 3924 147th Avenue for 38 years now. I'm 70 years old and was born and raised in West Palm. I have a very brief comment. We need to hang on to everything you stated, because once you let a little go, it's just a roller coaster. It may be a long process, but it will change everything. In my 70 years, I have watched it happen. My little granddaughter back here is a 6th generation Floridian. Not Palm Beach County, but throughout Florida. I have seen a lot. This is it. There's nothing like us. When you let it go that much, it will be gone. And I just have to say it, because I know in my gut and in my heart and in my brain, that's what will happen. Thank you.
The next resident who wishes her comment to be read into the record is Denise DeVita, and she says, reject the overlay. No to all development on Okeechobee Boulevard. It needs to stay rural. She's been here 20 years, and she didn't come here to have, I can't really quite read it, but development. The next speaker is Katie Lakeman.
Katie Lakeman, 15162 25th Place North. I've also lived here for 35 years. This is not why we moved here. I raised my kids here too. Like, there's plenty of military trails and stuff. I also came from Davie. I rode in a parade down Davie Road Extension and Griffin Road. Try it now, you'll be dead in 5 seconds. I used to ride down Okeechobee Road. I'm not doing that. Are you crazy? I would ride down to 60th Canal, down to Seminole Pratt to Okeechobee and home. We are losing our ground. Stand it.
The next speaker is Cassie Succi.
Hi, Cassie Succi. I was looking at this information. First of all, I agree with everything the last speakers have said. And the list of properties, there's a lot of mislabeled properties. We don't have that many commercial on the property. They list Big Dog Ranch as commercial, but it's actually zoned ag res. And it has a designation of an orphan non-professional use. So I don't know where on this thing shows it as commercial, so that's another mistake. And number 6 is listed as commercial. It's ag res, and it's being used as warehouse. What I see is businesses on Okeechobee right now illegally operating. Why aren't we code enforcing them? We have a code enforcement department. I asked at a workshop if the town staff could do code enforcement, and the answer was yes, they can. Okay? But we all drive down the road and everybody looks this way, and nobody does anything. So if Big Dog Ranch is acting as commercial, that was not their original intent, then they need to be code enforced. And this property at B Road in Okeechobee, if that's listing as commercial, which violates their zoning, they need to be code enforced and there's probably 6 or 7 other ones. So before we go ahead and add other stuff, we need to fix the problems and code enforce the problems right now. Because adding commercial under the guise of we're going to fix the bad behavior is complete insanity. And I think it's the very definition of insanity. We're all watching commercial on Southern Boulevard. How well is that going? How many people think it's going great, that they're following all the rules? I don't know. I remember a meeting where our mayor got up and the developer came in. They said, okay, well, you can do this, but we need that equestrian bridge, and we need it by this date. That date's passed by months, hasn't happened. Another developer at B Road, we have a conservation area put in to protect the residents by the back of the development. The developer is required to keep the drainage on their site plan. So instead of coming to the council, they went ahead and dug their drainage in our conservation area and then came to the council and asked for forgiveness and said, oh, it can be a fishing lake. Well, I talked with the developer outside the meeting of that meeting. And I asked them, and they said that the one that was the person that was going to be building that pod wouldn't have been able to build the pod to the size they wanted if they would have kept their drainage on the site plan. That's the institutional zoning part. So I remember a couple months ago, they came forward with a site plan, and we were supposed to have this nice recreational area. They put in something that wasn't there. A lift station. The council chastised them, but then ultimately allowed them to do it and moved on. So I ask you, how well is the development going on Southern? So I think what we need to do is preserve what we have. Don't bisect our town. And the people that are doing stuff illegal or acting in bad behavior, we have a code enforcement. Put them in code enforcement. Bring them into compliance. And then when it's all done on Southern, let's take a look and see how well they did before we move on to destroying the rest of our town.
Before we go to the next speaker, I am going to just put into the record that we do have a number of active code enforcement cases on both Okeechobee and Southern, but obviously we can't talk about them here. The next speaker is Mr. McClendon.
Todd McClendon. I've been against commercializing Okeechobee Boulevard since I've been here. Simon had talked about when I was on the council that we changed the comprehensive plan and the original vision as preserving and protecting Loxahatchee Groves. The town council can't change a comprehensive plan. We didn't change the comprehensive plan. It was part of the ULDC that has a designation as to arterial collector roads and that sort of thing, and we changed it to stop commercializing of Okeechobee Boulevard. That's the change. So when he talks about, we're not going by the original comprehensive plan, that's incorrect. We are. And that council changed it to try to protect Okeechobee Boulevard. They changed it in ULDC to try to prevent commercialization of Okeechobee Boulevard, which is trying to be done here today. Are we gonna, if I understand, we're gonna have question session later? Do we need to fill out another comment card for that? Because I do have several questions, and I am against commercial.
I think the answer is yes. Well, that's great. This timing's perfect. We have one more comment card. Then we're going to turn it back over to you, Tom, to kind of summarize some of the conversation and the questions that came up. And then we'll have Mr. Fleischman address some of the notes that he had. And then we'll go back into open Q&A with the comment cards. So, Nina Corning.
Do we need to give addresses? No.
We know yours.
Exactly. Nina Corning. I'm very glad I waited to speak because you all did a wonderful job at bringing up many different issues. I want to remind everybody that we are actually not the only ones that have control over development. When a development is approved, it also goes through the traffic and South Florida water management, etc. So when we put all of this commercial on Okeechobee, it depends on what goes there. And right now, it's as broad as you can imagine. In these buildings, I mean, the maximum size is huge. And then we keep adding additional property, land, to the back, filtrating into us. So when that happens, there's a traffic count that goes with each developed property. And that is not in our control. That adds traffic to Okeechobee. It adds traffic to Okeechobee. Okeechobee that we've tried, and I don't care what Simon just said, the intent of Okeechobee has always been to keep it small and rural. And then, when you've added all of this traffic, you're going to be required to add lanes. You yourself, Loxahatchee Groves themselves, has added traffic to Okeechobee at that point in time. So what happens? What happens? They say we need more space. Wherever there isn't space for 6-laning, there will be space for 6-laning because that'll be part of the requirement. Okay? You can forget about your horse trails. You can forget about our protection that the county isn't supposed to put traffic through a rural town. Because guess what? When you have done the overlay on Okeechobee, you're no longer rural there. You're no longer rural, and they're not passing through rural, so they don't have that in the way. So you're making it easier for development. You're making it easier for the county, who has given permission for development beyond us to pass through us. I mean, how stupid can we be? How stupid can we be to allow this and to add to it? Then there is the other part. I remember the flood. I remember E Road having such difficulties passing the water through Okeechobee. I went to Yohi back then and asked him, is there a problem? Is there a problem in Okeechobee? Because he had all these divers going in under all of our culverts. Is there a problem with that culvert on E Road? Did you find any debris in there, any roots in there? He says, no, that was clean. It's just not big enough. So what do you think happens when you then allow for impervious, meaning not allowing water to seep into the ground, infiltrate? What do you think happens to our canals that are pretty much stretched already, and our culverts that are pretty much stretched already? What do you think happens to all the property that are north of Okeechobee? You're going to flood us. And then you're going to come back to us and say, oh, we need ditches from you. We need more land from you. We need more easements from you. We take. This council is supposed to protect us. It's supposed to protect us. It's not there to serve the development. It's not there to serve the county. It is not there to serve the developments that are beyond us and use us as cut through traffic. And this is exactly what we're going down to. This is the Achilles heel of us. Why is it that we wrote what we wrote in our original documents? It was because we knew that we needed any development to be on Southern. We knew that. Sometimes we have to go back and strengthen language because we find with time that it isn't strong enough. And that's okay. But the intent was always there for us to be rural and for us to see that the traffic doesn't bisect us. So is it a question of what somebody is doing on Okeechobee, all this code enforcement stuff? Yeah, go after the big boys that are doing terrible things, that are putting things in our water or so forth. Go do that. But to go and use this as an excuse to say that, oh, we do more of what we don't like, so it's legal? Or this is going to protect our trees? Okay, the mere conversation of commercializing Okeechobee, the mere conversation of it, has encouraged people to clear. If you were not to speak about constant commercialization of Okeechobee, you wouldn't have the loss of trees in Okeechobee right now that we have. They prep, they calculate. Yes, they make an assumption when they buy property of what will happen in the future. And that's all it is. It is an assumption. And guess what? We need to reverse it. We need to make that bet wrong. We need to go to what we intended to be, a rural agricultural town. That's it. Thank you.
Are there any further comment cards in the audience for the first round? Because otherwise I'd like to bring Tom back up to kind of summarize what he's been hearing and kind of start the Q&A and also give Mr. Fleischman a chance to answer technical questions as needed.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming out this morning, this beautiful Saturday morning, and providing your comments. I think to summarize what I heard pretty clearly is preserving the rural character of the community is a foundational issue in the community, and I think the history is part of that, part of why the community incorporated to begin with. So that's something that is certainly a challenge over time as development happens both around you and within the community. I guess the challenge for staff is how does this move the ball forward on that concern? How does it address that concern? And then something that I think I was it didn't show up well in the presentation. But what are the sort of maybe I can start the technical questions. What are the sort of commercial, quote unquote commercial, actually let me touch on that for a second. Commercial is one of these words that it means a lot of different things. It has a lot of different definitions depending on the context. Property appraiser use categories are they only have a few, so it's a relatively inexact or crude measure of what the uses are, but what would be defined as what the commercial uses are is what's going to show up in the actual language of the proposal. Is going to describe what those are. So maybe we could share with everybody what is proposed as far as uses. Actually, what I'm most interested in is the existing zoning in place today. What does it allow, and then what additional things would be allowed if the proposal was approved? Is that a fair question?
It's a very fair
Okay.
question. I think Mr. Fleischman can answer it in more detail, but very briefly stated, the commercial that's on Okeechobee is that which was approved by Palm Beach County at the time of incorporation, and primarily the rest of it is zoned as agricultural residential. In the agricultural residential, our code And bona fide ag status allows, by the way, for trees to be cut down. We try to control that with an exemption and waiver form in order to match what our ULDC decided, but I did want to have this opportunity to make that statement because the clear cutting is a result of what's already allowed by the bona fide ag, which many of those properties have. What is being proposed in this overlay is a result of a number of previous public meetings, and I think that Mr. Fleischman will be able to walk everybody through those uses, but I don't believe the intention was ever for allowing commercial, the same kind of commercial that's allowed on Southern Boulevard. And I think that that has to be a clear statement because the intention was to use the public input that has been gained, by the way, since sometime in 2012, because this actually came forward once before in 2015. I am not trying to say it is the way it should be as it's written. I am simply trying to say how we got here and what's in it. And Ms. Marshall, if you let Mr. Fleischman go, and then we'll start taking some questions.
Yeah,
You want to take it?
yeah, I'm fine with letting her.
Okay.
Yeah, go
If you
ahead.
wouldn't mind to use the mic as well. Could you please
Yeah.
use the mic? I have a question first.
Oh, sure.
One of the questions I had, and having attended some of these pre-vision meetings that they're talking about, they were open to people who were not residents of Loxahatchee. So the vision meetings were open to land developers, it was open to land speculators, it was open to commercial entities, it was open to people who were not Loxahatchee residents. So discussing what those visions were then, I think is a little bit, perhaps a little bit skewed, and I think we're having a better idea now of what the actual residents want. So I just wanted to clarify what those visioning statements were like for those of us that were there.
Can he step up to this mic?
Yeah. My name's Jim Fleischman, planning consultant for the town. We had numerous public involvement activities. The first one was the visioning session at the college, and it was apparent that there were more than just residents and property owners at that. At that meeting, a rather extensive list of potential uses was developed. Now, after that, we got a grant from the state to look at the comprehensive plan in terms of potentially identifying an overlay and identifying uses within the Okeechobee corridor. As part of that, we had 2 workshops and an online survey. At those workshops and the online survey, at the workshops, I don't believe that we had any developers at those 2 workshops. The online survey was directed to property owners in town, and I certainly assume that most of the results of that were property owners. Okay, but and then we prepared a draft of the overlay, which was approved by the town council on first reading last September, September of 2020. And at that time, the council wasn't totally confident that they had an opportunity to be reviewed by residents of the town. So they directed staff to combine our Unified Land Development Regulations Committee and our Planning and Zoning Board into a joint committee solely of town residents. That that joint committee met for 7 months and had extensive, sometimes there were heated discussions about what should the overlay consist of and what uses should be allowed in the overlay. What's in your package now was essentially the result of those 7 months of discussions by the joint committee. And that is what is currently being proposed for second reading to amend the comprehensive plan. Now, if you want to take a look at what is specifically being recommended, turn to page 2 of the handout. We have on pages 2 and 3, we essentially have 6 different categories of use, but the specific commercial uses are really all included within uses 2 and 3. Parens 2, parens 3 at the bottom of page 2. And we had.
Our numbers are different than yours, so let me
Oh.
go to. Okay, so it's page 5.
I'm sorry.
In the handout we got today.
Okay. Pages,
Everything got renumbered.
okay, page 5 and 6.
There we go.
And we spent a great deal of our time in those two joint, or 7 or 8 joint committee meetings, going over different commercial uses and coming up with a final recommendation in terms of uses that the committee felt were consistent with the character, the rural character of the town, and had low impacts, and also represented a very small building footprint on our large properties. So that's how we got to this point. And it certainly is my feeling that we had substantial public input. We also had a couple of public hearings prior to first reading of the adoption ordinance. So it's not like staff, myself, anybody else is trying to push these commercial uses onto the town. These uses were the result of 2 years of very extensive involvement by the public. Now, to get to a couple of the specific questions, the issues of buffers were raised. We're proposing that on a property that gets one of these commercial uses, that there be a 100-foot buffer on the back, separating it from properties that abut those that are adjacent to Okeechobee. Yeah.
I know I have to go to the microphone, right?
Yes, we also need a card. You may come to the microphone, we'll go ahead and write the card. Please come to the microphone.
When you talk about a buffer, again, because I'm very focused on the impacts of light pollution, does the buffer do anything to reduce light pollution, and does any of this reduce traffic, and does any of this reduce noise pollution? Because noise pollution is not, buffers don't work in noise pollution or light pollution.
Well, any commercial would have to meet standards that are already in our land development code. As far as light goes, we have an ordinance that says that a commercial development cannot exceed 0 lumens on adjacent properties, which means essentially that the light that's generated on the project essentially has to remain on the project. That's in our code now.
Right, that's pretty difficult. I mean, it's certainly not happening on the public's property or Aldi's or anything else. I mean, it
The, that requirement is a requirement between commercial and residential properties. There,
Yeah, I mean, you can.
well, there's no residential properties that abut the commercial development on Southern.
You've got that residential property that abuts Aldi's.
No, it does not abut.
Mr. Fleischman?
It does not abut Aldi's. It's farther north.
Mr. Fleischman?
They get light pollution from Aldi's, so even if it's not abutting, they're still getting the light pollution from Aldi's.
The lumens generated,
So already we've
the
got
lumens-
light pollution on,
the lumens generated by that property, per the photometric study that was done as part of it, showed that there were no lumens generated beyond the border.
but that's just not the case. I mean, you can drive by and see the assessed properties lit up.
I just want to interrupt for a moment, please. The questions that were originally asked were with regard to Southern Boulevard and the buffers, I'm sorry, on Okeechobee Boulevard and the buffers on Okeechobee Boulevard and what is provided in here now. In your handout, you have an example of what the floor area ratio would be, the maximum lot coverage and the required setbacks. And so I think in answering the question about lumens, noise, access, it would be relative to Okeechobee, not Aldi, because it is different.
No, it's not.
Well-
No, it's not. You just said it wasn't.
Okay, well, let me,
You just said it wasn't.
Our codes will still apply, but the way that this has been written shows, we have 3 different examples, and it shows the floor area ratio as it is currently written with the buffers that are currently there. And I think it would be good to speak to that, Mr. Fleischman.
yeah, I just have one more thing on light. The way that I look at light pollution is almost like looking at a rainstorm. It's either raining on your property or it's raining off in the distance, and you can see that it's raining. That's the same thing with the lumens. The lumens have to stop at the property line, but you can still see that there's a light somewhere in the distance.
As long as, okay, let me clarify this, because again, I have studied this extensively, and as a veterinarian, it is my job to study this extensively. Anytime light contacts your retina, that is light pollution. And the minute light contacts your retina, it suppresses melatonin in your system, which will kill our bees. And we know now the melatonin system is very important. We're now thinking in these industrialized countries, one of the reasons that this is considered such a health hazard for us as agricultural entities, it is huge. But now we're seeing it, and we see it first in the animals, and then the medical doctors, the American Medical Association goes, well, what about this? We are seeing puberty in girls in these heavy light areas, that the puberty in girls is going from 11 or 12 years old and dropping to 7 to 8 years old because of the influence of light. It is considered a health hazard. Anytime light strikes your retina, that is light pollution. It is not the beam of light comes this way, because light goes all different directions. Anytime it strikes a retina, any retina, whether it's a bee's retina or our retina, that is the definition of light pollution.
Can I just go ahead?
Yeah.
Do you all have dark skies provisions in your lighting code now? Like fixture height and
Yeah.
those sorts of
Adjust it
things?
downwards.
Okay, because that is an issue. There are things out there, because exactly what you said about seeing the rainstorm, that is, that is true. You see the light even though it doesn't meet the foot candle requirement. What is this a picture of?
The international
Oh, yeah, that's.
sky communities,
Oh, okay.
all that.
Yeah, I know there are model ordinances out there for dark sky stuff, and because I think this is an issue for, we're talking a lot about rural character. This is a rural character issue across the whole town, so.
Absolutely.
And it's different than what Palm Beach County's ULPC would have
Yeah.
required.
That is correct.
And I totally disagree that the 100-foot buffer will not have any impact on light pollution.
If I can see it from 100 feet away, and again, light doesn't just travel down. Light travels in a 360 spherical direction. And so it will, unless the light is below that 100-foot buffer. I mean, again, it's like, yes, as long as you can see light, it will affect you. Again, as long as it strikes your retina, it is light pollution.
Mr. Bradford, you're going to include that in the Treasure Coast report to us to revisit? Thank you.
For you as
Yes.
well.
Sure, I'll try and field that.
So,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
that's
Here,
okay.
come to the microphone, but let me get in the way, right? Okay, go
that's all
ahead.
right. So initially, Treasure Coast Planning, in my understanding, was initially contacted to an impact study, and the quote I had here is, it was originally contacted to an impact study and make suggestions regarding revenue. Again, contacted to an impact study, and we talked about impact studies before, none of which we know have been done, but was contacted to an impact study and make suggestions regarding revenue, crime, pollution, and design to help protect the town residents from encroachment and development. Has that impact study been done by Treasure Coast Planning? This is the original
No,
statement there.
we did not, we did an interlocal agreement proposal to the town council, and they did not engage us for that activity. That was going to be a broader look. We actually had, a lot of it was going to relate to mobility in the town, transportation options, things like that. The touching on the overlay was, kind of an add-on or a side issue to that, but no, that we did not proceed with that. They did not engage us to do any of that, no. No, the only thing that we're have any agreement with the town for right now is Kim being at the meeting a couple of weeks ago, me being here today, summarizing what we hear from the public and providing that to the council. So that's all we're under contract for right now.
Okay, so again, this came from an original document, I'll have to look at the document.
Yeah, we didn't proceed with that. That did not go forward.
I just want to make a quick comment. Everything that's being said today, plus everything that was said at the first meeting, will be included in a letter from Treasure Coast. So the full conversation with regard to dark skies and lighting and lumens and revisiting our code will certainly be in there. The reason that I've put the slide up that is currently up is this is what is written right now in the proposed overlay. And I think that this is what we are kind of discussing, just to keep it focused, not to say we don't want all the rest of the comments. Just wanted to clarify, we want your comments, but this is what's in the overlay. And the next person is Mr. McClendon, if you've answered those questions, Mr. Fleischman.
Well, there was a couple other questions that came up.
Okay.
There was a question about what uses are currently allowed in the AR district. And the two principal uses that are allowed in the AR district at this point are single-family residential and agriculture, period. Agriculture, once they get a bona fide use designation by the property appraiser, can come in and clear an entire property without having to mitigate at all. Under the overlay, any commercial development would require mitigation for trees taken by the developer. And the next one was about the characteristics of Okeechobee Boulevard. In the overlay as we have it now, we're proposing that Okeechobee become what we call a rural parkway, which would essentially be 2 lanes with a median and left turn lanes at the letter roads, which meets the turn requirement, and either traffic lights or roundabouts at selected letter roads. Let's see. Okay, I think that's the gist of the major questions that were asked during that session.
Mr. McClendon? Thank you, Mr. Fleischman. And Mr. Bradford.
Todd McClendon. I have a couple things I want to say first. I hope the council is listening to the overwhelming objection to commercializing Okeechobee Boulevard. I wasn't at the first meeting, but my understanding was that's what happened there. The committees that looked at this previously were looking at it with the belief that the council wanted to commercialize Okeechobee Boulevard, and they looked at it with what could we live with as a committee. But we should have never gotten to that point. It should have been stopped then and said, no, as a committee, we don't want to commercialize Okeechobee Boulevard. Too bad to the council. As for clear cutting on agricultural properties, there's case law that says you don't get full rights when you have agriculture. You can't do anything that you want on your property unlimited. So if our code now says that you can clear cut with agriculture, it can be changed. That can be stopped. So to get to my questions, has a study been shown? Has a study been done to show if there was a 80% build out with what's being proposed today with the 0.1 FAR? What kind of traffic input would there be on Okeechobee Boulevard, and how wide would Okeechobee Boulevard need to be to sustain that? I understand that there's some uses that would have higher traffic counts than others. We could give a range on that. So that's my first question. Based on that, what impact potentially would there be on the lettered roads, and would potentially they have to be widened to maintain that? So like the roads that go from Okeechobee to Southern Boulevard, would we have such an increase on, say, D Road? Would it need to be widened? Do we know what the commercial potential is on Southern Boulevard square foot wides with the way the code's written today as opposed to what's being allowed on Okeechobee Boulevard with this? If I'm not mistaken, it was like 1.4 million square feet with what's here now. And that doesn't include the smaller properties that could be combined to make a 5-acre parcel. And it doesn't include 15-acre parcels that can be divided into 3 parcels. So that 1.4 million square feet is a very potential low number as compared to what it could potentially be. And I suspect there's probably more commercial would be allowed on Okeechobee Boulevard with what's being proposed than what's allowed on Southern Boulevard today, which is mind-boggling. Currently, right now, there is a heavier increase of traffic on there because of these impacts with these people that are operating illegally now. If we stop those, we would be decreasing the amount of traffic on Okeechobee Boulevard. And like people talked about, we need to do that. We need to put an end to that and start decreasing the amount of traffic. We talked about, in here it talks about a landscape buffer, this big landscape buffer. Let's be serious. sod is landscaping, right? So you could have a landscape buffer of 300 feet that's sod, and it would meet what's in here today. And, you know, Jim talked about, the light pollution wouldn't go across a landscape buffer. Surely it would with sod. And I know it could be strengthened to include something other than that, but right now it just says landscape buffer, which could be sod. I think that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Fleischman, I think you probably can answer those. And would you like me to put the slide up?
Yeah, that's fine. Well, first of all, it certainly was not my impression that the council formed these committees and all of these various public involvement processes with a preconception that commercial was going to happen on Okeechobee Boulevard. What in my mind, the committees and the effort were formed as a result of the 2019 visioning session that we had at the college, which was attended by approximately 100 people. And at that, it was not 100 developers.
Is that including developers?
Including developers, yeah. But what came out of that was a potential list of uses on Okeechobee Boulevard. That provided the impetus, in my mind, for this effort to move forward. Now, as far as traffic counts go, I checked the Palm Beach County's traffic counts on Okeechobee for the last 4 years, and traffic has not increased on Okeechobee, which surprised me. based on their counts, the traffic has maintained its historic level over the last 3 or 4 years. Well, that's fine. I'm talking about counts. If we do,
No, hold on one second. The question was, did you study the impacts that build out of the proposal?
No, we have not at this point. Number one, the issue of the floor area ratio has been greatly debated. I mean, is it going to be 0.1 or could it be something less? I think that we would need some specific direction from the council before we looked into that. Plus, we would have to make assumptions as to which of these uses were going to occur on the properties. What you said, Todd, was that we could take an average or something like that and apply that to all properties. Yes, we could do that. It's something that has to under the current way we do this. It's done on a project by project basis as opposed to looking at a comprehensive overview of an entire corridor at its ultimate development. Now we could do that, but it has not been done yet.
Mr. Fleischman, Mr. McClinton mentioned square footage of the build-out. I think that you've looked at it by the floor area ratio, possible floor area ratios.
Yeah, that table that's up on the screen there is a look at the square footage that would be generated by 3 different floor area ratios, 0.1, 0.07, and 0.05. And that's based on the assumption that properties that fit the definition of the minimum lot size of 5 acres, or those that are just under 5 acres, because they very likely had to give some right of way to Okeechobee right away when it was taken previously, and the rest of the properties we assumed an FAR or a development potential at 0. So the square footage, assuming the 0.1 FAR was to be developed on all of those subject properties, is over 1 million square feet. And then that gets down, if the FAR is 0.05, it gets down to 300 and some thousand. So there, you can see that there's a great range in development potential based on the FAR that is ultimately adopted.
Ms. Marshall, Mr. Schloss has a card in, so
Well-
Morley? What-
I put my card in again. I had not seen this before this meeting, and I'm pretty shocked at some things that are in here. My primary concern is traffic on Okeechobee. I'm looking under policy 1.16.2, section 3, where it talks about low-impact commercial uses. Saddle and leather shops, coffee shops, breakfast and lunch, family-style restaurants, farm-to-table restaurants, specialty foods, including ice cream, yogurt, bakeries, butcher, florist shops, bed and breakfasts, residential enterprise, landscape service, pet grooming. Which one of those does not increase traffic on Okeechobee? Which one of those? Every single one of them would increase traffic on Okeechobee. And we can even go to the section ahead, section 2, where it talks about farmers markets and green markets and so on. Section 3 is the most scary. And my concern is traffic on Okeechobee. I talked to all the candidates running in the last election. Every single one talked about keeping it rural, keeping Okeechobee's traffic down. No matter which side you're on, they all said the same thing. And it's really important that we do that, which means no to any commercial development. I have a suggestion. Don't know where I heard it. It's not original. Somebody's talked about on the letter roads to cross Okeechobee, putting something so that a equestrian, bicycle, or pedestrian could push a button and stop the traffic so that people could cross. What an amazing, wonderful idea to cut down on traffic on Okeechobee, to put in something so that a bicyclist, an equestrian, people have told me who ride horses, they won't do it on Okeechobee. Why not? We can't even cross it. And this would definitely help with that. That's just a suggestion that I've heard, not my own originally. But I think that it's really, really important when you actually look at what's written here. It's shocking. It's shocking. Nobody and somebody said you did a traffic count on Okeechobee, the county did. I can tell you, I've lived here solidly since 2020, and I visited for many years before then. By the way, we have a historical thing. Sunsport's from 1965. That's when it was founded. Talk about historical. Anyway, and we do not have any light, and we do not cut down any trees except Brazilian pepper. That's our rule. No trees down except Brazilian pepper. So in any case, I think this thing needs to be scrapped. It's no commercial. And when I look at this, particularly this low impact commercial uses, they're not low impact. You tell me that these family style restaurants and shops and butcher shops and so on do not increase traffic? Nonsense. Of course they do. And so let's do everything we can to cut down traffic make it as difficult to drive on Okeechobee as possible. And that'll cut down traffic. It'll cut down the traffic from Margate, from Westlake, I mean. Well, that's a slip, isn't it, Margate? To cut down traffic from Westlake, to put these in place and not have any of this crazy development. And I think, from what I hear from other people saying, other people pretty much agree with what I'm saying. And I know the people I talk to, every single person I've talked to at Sunsport agrees with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next card is Miss Lakeman, and then we have Miss Marshall, and then we have Miss Corning. We
Todd?
also only have 25 more minutes in the room until, okay.
Did I get to all your questions? I did, okay.
Mine is very quick. I'm going to piggyback on this guy over here. When can we trash this? When's the deadline? When's the due date? We got a date?
Well, we're looking at
Microphone,
July
Jim.
5th. We're looking at either July 5th if the council wants to adopt this in its current form, or if not, it can be delayed till after that. That's a council decision.
Okay, when can we say no thank you?
Well, whenever it's on the council agenda, and I'm saying that's not decided
It's been
yet.
around for a while now, so that's
Yes, it is. Yeah.
July 5th.
Yes, ma'am, I wrote it.
That's when it has to be.
Okay.
Well, if
You did say something else after, that's right.
if it's
When will it advertise if it's going on July 5th?
10 days prior, in order to be adopted.
Next week.
25th of June. Next
Next week.
This week.
Next week.
Next week.
It will advertise 10 days ahead of time, so that'll be June 25th, so that's next week.
Okay.
Okay, so my next thing is if everybody here really feels that way, perhaps you should show up at the meeting.
Okay.
Correction to my comment cards, Cassie Suchi was next, and then Ms. Marshall, and then Ms. Corning.
Okay, we have a drop dead date to adopt on second reading of July 13th. The council meeting before the 13th is on the 5th. So that's, if we're going to adopt it on second reading, which would make it official, that would be on July 5th. If the council decides that they want to look at it some more and it goes beyond July 13th, then we essentially have to start all over again.
Okay, so let me make sure I got this right. If it goes to first reading, that would be on July 5th.
No, second.
Well, whatever. Okay, it could be the 5th or the 13th. Which one?
The 13th is a deadline that's been established by the state, okay?
Thank you.
But the 5th is when they're going to vote on it.
The 5th is the council meeting before the 13th.
Okay, that's all. I just want to.
Well, if they decide that they want to vote on it now, that's, which I don't know if that decision's been made yet.
There's no meeting between now and the 5th, is there?
There is a meeting on June 21st. However, there is not enough time to advertise this item for that. And the council has other options than its current schedule. But its currently scheduled first available meeting to discuss this is July 5th. Forgive me. Saturday morning. I'm fried from the week.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Our next speaker is Ms. Sushi. Yes, please.
Okay, I have a couple questions, but I'll read them and then. So, thank you for asking about the potential build-out. My question is, why don't, in all these little flyers, we put potential build-out, over 1.2 million square feet of commercial? It should be put in there so people can see it. But thank you for bringing it up at the meeting. That was one question. Has there been any studies, traffic studies, impact? Has there been a crime study impact and a cost increase to that crime impact? No. Those are questions you can answer in just a second. And has there been any study showing revenue generated from a commercial project for the town in respect to all the other costs that are gonna go up? So I have other questions, but do you wanna answer those first?
Yeah, what was the very first one?
Okay. Has there been a traffic impact
No,
study?
no.
Of the increase of commercial over 1.2 million square feet on Okeechobee?
No,
Okay. Has there been a crime study impact in the commercial on Okeechobee with that much square footage?
no,
Has there been any study showing the revenue generated from a commercial project in respect to Okeechobee, in respect to how the costs are gonna go up for the residents?
no, but that's one thing that very likely should be done.
Okay. The next question is, you talk about, we have ULDCs. Are our ULDCs written in stone? They can never be changed and nobody can ask for a variance? Or can a developer come in and ask for a change for their development? And the answer is?
Yes,
Okay. So when we talk about our ULDCs, and people have come up to talk about light, and they've talked about buffering, and the 100-foot is great, but you just said ULDCs can be changed. So have there been any developers in developments on Southern that have asked for variances to the lighting, let's say the lighting ULDC, to change the number, the hours, whatever?
no,
No?
no.
Okay.
The only variances that have been granted on Southern are signs.
Wawa's did not ask for, I don't want to get into that. Okay, so we know they can. On Okeechobee, has anybody asked for any variances for the existing businesses there? Like changes of hours?
No,
You sure about that?
yes,
The preschool, didn't they ask to extend their hours past 11 o'clock and it was granted? So it does happen.
no, I don't believe that's the case.
I don't want to get into it. Okay, so then the buffering, we talk about buffering. So 100-foot is great, and I was on a ULDC when we were talking about it. It sounds great. When a developer comes in, they clear the land. Is the buffering going to be impervious to light and sight? Or is it going to be little sapling trees that you can still see the development? What's gonna be in place to protect, to make it where it can't be changed? Is there anything?
Yes, well, we have landscaping requirements that require a certain number of native trees and a certain amount of hedging.
Okay. And then one more thing, it was said earlier about there's different types of commercial. Okay? The definition of commercial, I was looking it up, it says the primary purpose, buying, selling, trading, merchandise or service. So how is a commercial different from a commercial? Are we trying to minimize the fact that there's commercial, or is there actually true different commercials? Not low and high, but I mean.
Yeah, there is different commercials. Depending upon the specific use, the traffic generation is different depending upon the use.
Okay, but it's still commercial.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we are now at 20 minutes and we have an additional comment card, so this will be it for now, so we can do a wrap up. Ms. Marshall, your question on data collection?
Yes, I wanted to ask a few quick questions on data collection, and Todd came up with this as well. One of the surveys that was done, that was sent out online, said, if we do commercial on Okeechobee, how would you like to see it? And so some of the data was collected off that. That is not a true survey because it never gave there's never been a survey that said, do you want commercial? So when we do data collection, it's very important to understand how that data is collected. So I also, and that went along again with when these committees were formed, they were formed to work on this overlay, but they weren't, they wouldn't have been formed unless it was to work on the overlay, if the overlay was not going to be done. The one other thing I want to ask is specifically what you said about the traffic. How did the county collect that data? Because I think we all have experienced there's quite a bit more traffic on Okeechobee than we had, say, 4 or 5 years ago. And I don't remember any traffic strips down, so I don't know. And again, how data is collected is very important to the end result of what is said. If they didn't do any of those traffic strips, then how did they collect their data on where the traffic was changed? Do you happen to know how they collected that data?
Well, all I know is that their procedures require them to put down the strips, and they do
Jim, I think some of the roads, and now I don't know this for the case here on Okeechobee, but I know countywide there are permanent counters that are embedded in the pavement at locations all over Palm Beach County. When they're studying a specific issue in a specific area, they go ahead and they run those hoses across, but you'll notice, like, you never see hoses stretched across, Military and Okeechobee, for example. But they absolutely publish those numbers, and so they're embedded inside the pavement, because going across a big road like that with those hoses.
Okeechobee by the elementary school as we speak today.
A hose? Okay.
Ms. Corning,
So they do both?
please forgive me. I want to just make sure we get everyone to get their comments. They will turn off the room at noon.
So, do we still have that map? That's the level for the service level roads. Is that still part of the package?
Yes.
Do you realize that shows as if we are crossing Collecting Canal, that we are going into Westlake, etc., that this map was done for a completely different purpose and drawn up just for service level, that should not be in a comp plan? If we have this in a comp plan, you realize that a developer could use that map against us to require us to fulfill certain things for them. And furthermore, why wasn't that shown last time when the council discussed it? Why wasn't it part of the package?
Well, those roads, the level 1 roads, are roads that have access to Okeechobee and Southern. That's the definition.
Actually, it doesn't. The map on it is the important part. Okay.
Yeah.
And the language that prohibits Westlake to attach to us is not strong enough. That's one of the big faults in this particular overlay that you're trying to push through, or comp plan amendment. Now, I know the answer to this, you know the answer to this, and maybe half of this room does too. How many votes does it take to make a comp plan map amendment?
It takes 4. The language in the comp plan relative to preventing access between areas outside of the town and inside of the town mirror the language that was in the ordinance, the similar ordinance that was passed by the council.
So now, once this overlay has been passed, provided it ever does get there, what does it take to then make changes within the overlay to, for example, say no more ag, or no more this, or no more that, or add this, add that, increase? What does it take to do that? Doesn't take 4 votes, does it?
If you're going to change the overlay in the comprehensive plan, it takes 4.
That was not the question. The question was, once you have the overlay, to make changes within the overlay, you're no longer required a map change. So it doesn't take 4 votes, it takes 3 votes to then make amendments. I can give you a perfect example for it, since we're all sitting in Wellington. I believe there was an overlay, maybe it wasn't. But Paddock Park 1 once had horses. And now, Paddock Park 1 only has horses and stables that have been established and built. That was something that was taken away later. So overlays are different. They're a different tool. And when you've allowed an overlay, then that overlay is in, and you can do different things within that overlay, just like you can do different things in MLUs. It's a tool to go and control an area in a different manner, is it not?
If you're talking about changing a use from, say, vacant to commercial, the way the overlay is written, it requires site plan approval and Category A special exception approval by the town council. Those would be by resolution requiring 3 votes.
So there we have, it's another problem. So I've been on a committee for a considerable amount of time, and I know what happens when you're on a committee. You really don't control the agenda, or at least I was told I am not to control it as chair. The manager controls it, or the council controls it, and they bring certain questions to you, and you're to deal with those questions. So it is a if-then. Even when the public came and was asked, it was an if-then. Well, I don't like to sound gloom, but if I were to be told I had to die today, which way would I like to die? If then, what would I answer? What would you answer? It is not necessarily something that condones me dying today, now does it? Neither does it when you're on the committee and you're being asked, look this paperwork over, see what we would allow. If there's commercial, what commercial would you like to see? These are leading questions. And that's not the way we should handle this. And we keep getting into the conversation of what's wrong with the overlay, partially because it's this, we don't know what's happening. We don't know. Are we doing with the overlay? Are we not doing with the overlay? Clearly, most people have spoken out to saying, we don't want the overlay. But yet here we are, we keep talking about details of the overlay, which in itself is always walking this little mini walk into it.
Ms. Corning, I'm sorry. We
I
only
have
have 10
one
more
more,
minutes,
and I'm fairly sure.
I would like to be able to let
Yep.
the other people have a comment and to close the meeting.
There's one more thing, and this is going to come up.
Your first question first.
Sure.
Okay. As far as the agendas being directed by the council and/or by staff, absolutely not true. And Todd, you can affirm that
I don't think.
how many times did the joint committee ask staff to come back with with answers to specific questions and issues at the next meeting, which we did.
My question or his question?
That is true to a certain extent, but there was some stuff of this that was not given to us. The traffic, or the width of Okeechobee Boulevard was not given to us, right? We were told not to look at the traffic impact to our committee. Do you remember that? That was specifically removed.
That wasn't part of what we're doing. The traffic impact study was not part of the overlay itself. That's a potential impact of the overlay.
But I'm talking about the width, where we are adding a potential turning lane to Okeechobee Boulevard.
Right.
That was removed from us. We weren't to look at that portion.
We have a turning lane in it now.
But we weren't allowed to look at that. We were told that the ULDC committee wasn't to look at that. Only the planning and zoning was going to look at that. That was stripped from us.
I'd like to be able to go ahead and let Miss Sell have her comment.
If I
Ms.
would
Sell,
like
would
to
you like
finish my
to?
question, please, because this was hitchhiked.
So what is your question?
So I have one more important thing. This was used against.
Statement or a question?
It's a question. But I have to explain it because otherwise nobody will understand the question. There was one more important thing that led the council to continue on the path. There are some good things inside of this package. One, we really want to move 140th E Road, which has been removed everywhere else, off our own comp plan. And not, or actually put it in our own comp plan. It's not on our own comp plan, but to actually specifically state that it's off. That's a good thing. Now, when we've asked that certain things could be handled individually, whether it's a map for roads that might be fixed or whether it's this, there was always this little bit of push. No, we have to do this now because we got this in before the governor required us to make certain other changes. So we have to get this in now. We have to get this in with this whole package, with this overlay, right? So I actually went and looked it up. It's a while ago when I looked it up. It's first when it came up. I don't have it all clear in my mind. But if I remember correctly, first of all, the requirements that the governor is currently making for comp plan changes are not horrific. It's not something that this town would really turn in the grave over. And I believe there is also a requirement by which towns have to make a change a particular year, and I think it's not that far away. I'd like to know what the great objection is to having the council pick some of those things that the governor, and I believe, and he can answer that we're actually required to make some by a certain years, to make some of these changes to our comp plan. Why has this been as like, no, we can't pick certain things out of this. We can't pick the good things out. This whole thing has to go down the dragon's throat and get done in the way it is.
Part of the reason for these two workshops is to take another look at what's in this comp plan amendment. The council has every right to make changes to this, to make additions, to make deletions in between first reading, which has already occurred, and second reading. So this is not necessarily cast in stone. The council can still make changes to it and still be in compliance with the state statutes.
Okay. Ms. Sell's comment is, the council and developers are ready to move forward. Who do they work for? It appears the residents do not want this. And with that said, I think that we need to let Mr. Bradford close up the meeting. Oh my God, Mr. Lanahan, oh my God, forgive me. Yes, you totally do. And then I think our mayor would like to make some closing comments.
Sure. No, thank you. Those were.
Forgive me on the
Oh, that's okay. I don't mind. Thank you, everybody, for your comments and your questions. I think the proposal, if it does move forward, is made stronger by addressing these issues. Clarifying things so that everyone has a good understanding of what is actually proposed and what are some of the potential impacts of what is proposed. So we will be collecting these all together between sessions 1 and 2. and providing that to the town council. And the mayor wanted to, Francine, did the mayor want to speak? Oh, there he is.
I object.
You don't have a choice to object. Fill out a card. You want to talk?
This wasn't for us, this was for us.
Yeah. So, how did we get here in the beginning? Back in the beginning, it was like, okay, Southern Boulevard's general commercial, franchises, whatever, and Okeechobee was something different. Previous councils had approved other things on Okeechobee, and then I wasn't involved then, and then there was like a stop on Okeechobee. And so the idea came up, what can we do different on Okeechobee? And it was a mom and pop thing. It was like, mom and pop things that our residents want, what you see in here, leather shop, things like that. And then, how can we maintain the rural environment? And what's been happening, several properties have been getting leveled in the name of ag and cows or nurseries or whatever. So, there are some good things in here. It's not everything's perfect. It's just another tool for the town to be in the loop if somebody wants to do something. It's a chance to keep that buffer around these properties and put a smaller building in the middle of them. The council was ready to chew this up, and then they decided, no, let the TPA get involved and let's understand, what advice the TPA can give as professionals before we as council, chew on this. So that delayed changes to this. So what you see is what was approved by a committee 6-1. Todd voted against it. He did. He was the one that voted against it. But he had a lot of good input during the discussion. Okay, if we do this, maybe this is better. So, but that's it. So, the goal was learn on Southern, create buffers to the residents, which, a lot of residents are complaining about what's happening in Southern and they get exposed to it. So when people cleared a property in Okeechobee, the residents would be exposed to Okeechobee. So some of the things, how do we prevent that from happening? How do we limit the size? You can see the total square footage at point one was like 700,000. And I sensed at the council meeting that there's no way point one's going to fly. I don't know, what the final number, but I think the .05 was down to 300,000. So, there's a lot of good things that can come from it. It's not every property. It's only the few properties that qualify, according to the table. So if we do nothing, then, I got a feeling eventually Okeechobee is just going to be open fields, and your light noise from Okeechobee is going to bounce right into the next property. And if they clear that property, it's going to keep bouncing inside. So, an opportunity to create some buffers, some trails, some multi-use areas. It won't be, 100%, but I think a lot of good things could come out of it on properties that we have a seat at the table. They have to come before the public. Public has input on all these proposals. So everything will be out in the open. Right now, there is nothing in the open Okeechobee. You drive down one day and all of a sudden, boom, property's cleared. What happened? Who gave them permission? Nobody gave them permission. The state did. State statute on ag says they can do that. Yes, it does. The town cannot go against state statute. So anyhow, so fill out a card if you want to talk.
You killed the team.
All right, so yeah. But anyhow, so just want to throw out those points on, how did we get here in the beginning? The goal was a mom and pop type situation, no franchises, no gas stations, that kind of stuff. So, thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Yeah, this will come for a public hearing, so I don't think the council members should debate the issue here. I don't know that it's productive, frankly. So, thank you all for coming. Have a lovely Saturday, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And it will be advertised and appear on the website when it is scheduled, if it is scheduled. Thank you.